I can't even tell you recently, especially like maybe in the last few years, how many clients have come to me asking me if what they saw on like a reel or a TikTok video was the right way to do spirituality. And I have always been someone who just basically asks back, well, did that make sense to you? Did it resonate with you? Is it something that really spoke to you? And and then it makes them kind of look at me like, "But I'm asking you." So, there's a lot of confusion sometimes when people are getting spirituality advice or ideas or practices, or things like that on social media. And I think social media can be incredibly lovely as far as spreading information that maybe people didn't even know or didn't, they totally resonate with, but they didn't know it before they saw a video. But at the end of the day, I'm constantly asking my clients what really works for them. What do they really want? And that's kind of more the important question than whether or not a random TikTok witchy spell works. Does that happen to you?
A lot. I get clients that, well, and they get really, I would say, almost hung up or bothered by things they hear or see in social media that they feel like it's right somehow because this person is claiming I this works for me, so therefore it works for everyone. And they're claiming if you don't do this, there's usually like this urgency, and it really puts people in a bad spot. And so that's why I'm excited we're talking about this today. I think that a lot of people need some maybe guardrails around social media and spirituality. I think this is a topic,
I
personally.
agree. That's what we're going to talk about today is just spirituality and social media, whether it's different rituals or practices or teachers or gurus, influencers, all of that. They're everywhere. And I think sometimes making sense of them can be a little hard. And because you're right, there's so much urgency sometimes. You'll see, I don't know, do this 30-second practice and you'll have abundance by the end of the week. It's a little like when I was young and there were, what were they called? Chain letters, and it would be
Yes.
like, "You have to do this and copy this to 5 friends and send it to them," like that kind of thing, and
Or the
people.
world falls on your face.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and it's so much pressure, first of all, that you didn't even really sign up for. You're just, like, scrolling through your social media, and all of a sudden, there's just, like, someone going, "You need to, comment on this, and you'll claim the blessing of what I'm talking about," things like that, and while I think that sometimes that's like, interesting, and why wouldn't it work? It also feels like sometimes it's more for clicks than for actual spirituality, and that's why I'm glad we're talking about this today too. And, here on the Modern Mystics podcast, we really think that you should be your own authority about your spirituality, and so even when we're talking about this, if you're feeling like, "I don't know, that resonates, but that doesn't," then we totally honor that. So we're just gonna kind of sift through some of this and talk about all kinds of aspects of social media spirituality. And again, you just pick what you like or what resonates and feel free to let go of the rest.
Yeah, and I think it's important, definitely that not only are we going to be like, we'll honor that, we're going to be your biggest supporters. We want you to do that with our content. We want you to suss out what's best for you and leave the rest because
Yes.
we're not suggesting that our way or even everything we say is the path. For sure, not that. And I think it's really important to keep in mind when we're talking about online content creators, there's a billion different motivations for them doing what they're doing. Maybe they're like Jennafer and I, and they've seen a real need in their communities, and they're trying to fill that need in an honorable way, full of integrity and giving their very best. Or maybe they don't really know themselves and they think they have a lot of information and they're very inexperienced and they don't know what they don't know. And maybe they are just trying to make a sell. So being conscious of just because they're presenting something, what's behind that? I just want that in the back of your heads, kind of as you're listening today, is what's motivating the person who's talking to you? You can ask yourself that question.
That's a wonderful rule of thumb because it's not being, it's not being, like, super skeptical, it's just trying to be really real and really informed about what's going on. I think you're right that sometimes people who are positioning themselves as experts may be much more like performance based, or they may really, like you said, want to sell things. So looking at like what seems to be the goal underneath is always important. And I think that's one of the biggest issues with social media and spirituality is that if you're watching a reel that's like 30 seconds to 2 minutes or something like that. There's only so much that can happen. There's only so much depth to it. There's a lot of sort of skimming on the surface. And while that has its benefits, and we'll talk about that a little bit, it also can make people doubt themselves. Because if someone is like very confident and saying, this is the way that you do A, B, and C, and then you'll be super spiritual and your life will be perfect, and they seem really, like, authoritative or even just confident, that sometimes it can make you question yourself or wonder if you're on the wrong path or you're not quite there yet or, something that's less than where you are. Because where you are in your spiritual journey right now is exactly where you need to be. There's nothing lacking in your spiritual journey. If you're, not as far as you'd like to be, great, just keep going. But for the most part, like, no one gets to tell you if your journey is wrong or off or anything like that. You can sometimes feel that or sense it. You can sometimes just be being hard on yourself. That's always like a very human thing to do, but your
Yes.
journey is your journey.
Well, and I was just thinking as you were sharing that about your Akashic Records class.
Mhm.
Right when I was just getting to know Jennafer, I attended a class that she was teaching on Akashic Records. I had read books on it. I had heard about Akashic Records forever. And I had been like, okay, well, what is this? Let's look into this. Let's do this. And everyone acts like it's this really difficult, spiritual, mystical, you have to like do a whole ritual and turn around 47 times and say the magic words. And then maybe if you're lucky, they'll grant you access.
Mhm.
And and the way you presented it was like, well, what do you guys think it is? Let's start there. And so it's a very open teaching style that we're looking for in
Yep.
content creators. We're looking for certain signatures and hallmarks. And one of my favorite things that I got from you in that class was, uh, dude, you've been doing Akashic Records. You just didn't know that's what they were called. And I have run into that with clients over and over, and I have run into that personally. Well, I will be unconsciously competent at something already available in my practice. And because I didn't use the right language that they want, that they frame it in, that I'm not doing that thing or I don't understand that thing. So be cautious to adopt other people's, I guess, judgments about your practice, like you were just saying, right? Like, y- y- you might already be doing that thing. I have run into that a lot in my practice where I'm doing something and then I'll read and be like, oh, that's what that is? Oh, I had no idea. That's interesting. Be listening for people that are definitive and this is the only way. That's a red flag to us.
Yeah, we're not really dogma friendly. So dogma is this is how it should be, and it shouldn't be any other way. Things like that. That's not in line and aligned with what we're trying to do as far as you being your own authority and having your own sovereignty in your spirituality. And so most of the time, if I see things like that online, it raises my eyebrows a little and And anything from, like, raising my eyebrows to, like, making me, furrow my brow, all kinds of facial expressions. But anyway, I feel like there's a lot of good things on social media as well as far as spirituality goes. And so we're gonna talk a lot about the benefits of online spirituality or spiritual teachers. We're also gonna talk a little bit about the pitfalls of, like, algorithm spirituality, and then we're gonna talk a little bit about, like, how to use your own discernment about these things so you can trust yourself without becoming, I don't know, cynical or too negative, that kind of thing. So the thing that we're talking about as far as algorithm goes, is that I just started talking about this thing and it started showing up in my in my social media theme or my feed or my For You page or that kind of thing. And sometimes you only look at one thing and then all of a sudden the algorithm goes, "Oh, that's what they like. So let's put more of that in front of them." And so sometimes if you've only visited, I don't know, one TikTok dance video and thought it was hilarious, then you might find that your feed is full of, like, people dancing, which, by the way, is very fun. So, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. But it works the same way for spirituality and spiritual videos or any video that kind of touts itself that way. So, but the thing about them is that all of those videos are really short, right? So they're created more for like engagement. Like you can like it, you can comment on it, you can hate it, whatever it is, it's it's so that you'll interact with things versus like depth. And spiritual practices are much more about going deep than and doing like really important work and trying to, kind of grow and connect and all of that. And so sometimes if you see, I don't know, a little let's see, like a reel that says something like, "Here's a 30-second spell jar you can make to get rid of a bully in your life." Or, if you like or share this post, then blessings will be on your on you forever or something like that. It works because as humans, we really love to engage and we like quick answers. Let's just be honest. I don't know about you guys, but I am not patient. So I like knowing, okay, I've got an answer. But also we like
Mhm.
feeling kind of special. So if we're like part of this great little club that
Mm.
gets all the blessings and the people that aren't in the club don't, then we feel super special, right? And if we don't know how to do quick solutions, sometimes we want magical solutions, and spirituality sometimes can feel like that, or spirituality videos on social media can feel like that. But most of the things you're going to see online compress like very ancient traditions, very like throughout the millennia traditions into like little bite-sized pieces, right? Because we want engagement.
Well, and I like that we compress those things and we turn them into modern language because sometimes the ancient language is inaccessible for people.
Sure.
Uh, um, just the way things are phrased, or if it's being translated from another language, sometimes the essence of it is lost in the translation. So even if you were to go read it, the English version of that, hearing it from a native speaker and getting the nuance and the cultural implications in a compressed, 30 seconds, that's valuable to me. So that is another benefit of having lots of teachers. As you were talking about the algorithm, one of the things that just has happened to me in for Imbolc in February, I clicked something in Pinterest, like rituals for February or something one time. It is now almost April, and that is all I get. Literally every day, a suggestion for rituals in February. Does it not know we're really past February? It does. It doesn't care because I
It
clicked it
doesn't care.
one
Yeah.
time. And it funnels you, self-fulfilling prophecy, the algorithm. So if you get on with someone who's not a great teacher, it can kind of feed you more not great teachers. And so the benefit is if you're going to look at social media spirituality, be broad so that you can start to compare and contrast because there are great teachers. There are great messages. I mean, some of my favorite TikToks are Asian TikToks because I don't speak those languages at all. And hearing the cultural references and the connotations are super valuable to me. I like having lots of voices. Maybe that's the way I need to hear it or you need to hear it that one time.
I agree. I also think that, I mean, bite-sized pieces make spirituality much more accessible, right? So maybe you've never really been introduced to meditation or tarot or energy work or, intuition or things like that. Maybe no one really taught you about those things or it wasn't part of your tradition growing up. And so if you see something really quickly on TikTok or on social media in general, it can be an interesting introduction. And if you're like a really good research person, if I get like a bee in my bonnet and I'm excited about something, I just go down a lot of resource or research holes on the internet, like Google wormholes and things like that. And so it can be a really good intro to some kind of spiritual practice that maybe you hadn't thought about or weren't exposed to before. And I think that's really lovely.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. If my practice is feeling stagnant, I will use social media to bring a spark back. I like lots of new things. I like trying new things, changes. So
Yeah.
that's one of the ways I use it. I am obsessed with working with the earth, and I had never heard of dirt spell work before. I got that off. I found that. I discovered that from a 30-second nothing and, I did my own research. I went down the rabbit holes and I educated myself, but I use dirt spell work all the time now. And I wouldn't have ever, I don't know, it would have never entered my frame. I work, with plants and the earth and I grow a garden and all that is dirt work too, sort of.
Sure.
But it's very different sect of magic or spell work or manifestation, whatever you want to call it. And now I use it and I wouldn't have discovered that. So there's the deep richness. It can broaden your practice in powerful ways.
I agree. I also think that even a little bit of education, even if teachers are only sharing like how they do something on social media, maybe you've been doing that, but you haven't done it that way, or you never thought to add that
Yes.
one particular element to your practice, or you never looked at it quite that way. Sometimes you can get little, not just a little bit of education, but a little bit of like additions to what you're already doing by seeing things on social media. So, and also I really love listening to teachers that can give me historical context. Like, why
Yes.
do these traditions do this? Why are we celebrating this? That kind of thing. And it helps me educate myself, first of all, and it helps bring like a deeper understanding to my spiritual practice. Anything that's like thought provoking or, increases your knowledge or helps you think about yourself in a different way, that can absolutely add to your spiritual practice. Another benefit I really like about spirituality online is that it can offer a lot of community. So if people are feeling, maybe you live in a place where what you're doing isn't practiced a lot, or so you don't have a lot of community specifically where you live. So online, you can find all kinds of community for people that are interested in or practicing certain spiritualities. And I feel like sometimes there's something about knowing there are others out there like you. Aside from it feeling less isolating, it also just helps you gain even more appreciation of your spiritual practice.
Yeah, it does. And like, even though it wasn't online, attending your class made me realize, wait, I have that as a spiritual practice,
Mhm.
right? You might learn how to name something that you're doing that can deepen it and add meaning to it. You might think I'm doing these weird things. No, you are in tune with the flow. And so you're discovering the natural ways the everything works with us. And just like those who've gone before you, we all rediscover these things. There's nothing new under the sun, they say, right?
Yes.
So I feel like that with spirituality, we feel like we've discovered this new path. No, we find out it's ancient. Always, it's always ancient. We're not
Yes.
doing anything new.
And something that people did for millennia. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's nice to get that right. And
Mhm.
as children, we're always trying to fit in, and I don't know that that completely goes out of most of us. There's a need for belonging, like you were saying.
Sure. I think that's very human.
Yes, we want to be part of something. So it's nice to find that through teachers online, and even spoofy, jokey stuff can give us that. So,
That's true. That's really true. I think there are also some pitfalls, which is just that what you get on social media is gonna be very oversimplified. So, it's not necessarily that you like, I don't know that you're going to social media for, like, an hour-long lecture on something, but sometimes
Usually
you'll
not.
just get, like, skimming the surface of something, and then if you're only skimming the surface, then the picture you're getting for it is very incomplete, and so it's one of those things that unless it leads you down kind of your own little, "I'm gonna go do some more research," it can feel a little like, "Oh, well, spiritual practices are super easy and super quick, and I can do them on my drive to work," which I mean, some you can, but it's like one of those things that I think packages it for convenience, but then keeps
Mhm.
it a little bit more on the surface, of actual like, the meat of things you don't always get to in a, 30-second reel.
Almost never do we get to that in a 30-second reel, and I think that that's also part of the harm, right? Where I was saying in the beginning, you have these teachers that what's their motivation? You can have someone that's watched lots of 30-second TikToks and they feel like they have this broad, amazing spiritual practice,
Right?
but it's a centimeter deep. There's no roots. There's nothing holding that spiritual practice. It's not tethered to anything. It's surface level floof,
Yes.
and it will blow away with the tiniest gust of wind. And so oversimplification is a serious problem with online content. Just because of the nature of what it is, I'm not saying people are doing something wrong. I have simplified content online. You have simplified content
Yeah.
online because we're hoping that you'll engage somewhere like this and get more depth.
Yes, and not only do things get oversimplified, sometimes very complex practices end up being reduced to sort of like aesthetics, right? Like, oh, I don't know, here's this witchcraft thing, but it's really just decor in my house. Or um, we can just manifest things by thinking of them instead of doing like our inner work, or like people like the motifs of tarot, and so they're like, "Let's just take the motifs in," and the meaning of it isn't as important as the actual aesthetic of it or the decor of it. So when we're oversimplifying things, sometimes we reduce the importance of them, and we kinda drill them down to just, like, I don't know, something we hang up in our homes, and then we're good to go.
Right. Like, I don't think we think about Thursday as Thor's Day as a culture
Right.
anymore. And so when we strip the, context and the historical meaning from these practices and we say, anybody can make a spell jar. That's true. Anybody can make a spell jar. But what is the spell jar doing for you as a human being? Spiritual practice is about growing you as a being, not
Yes.
about doing things. Even though I'm a doer and even though I like lots of doey things, that's for me. If I'm not doing the inner work, we talked last episode
Yes.
about in surrender about reflection and inner work and these reductionist tactics online for especially where traditions are being usurped and traditions are being I would say infantilized. It can be very offensive to people who have been a part of that tradition for their whole life or generations. And so we need to be careful that we're not uh, putting on a vibe versus engaging in a growth spiritual practice.
Yes.
So online content's not great for that either, usually.
True. And some practices are very closed. They're for
Yes.
people of a certain tribe or a certain lineage or certain initiations and things like that. And so sometimes if we're just looking at something and going, "Oh, I'm just gonna put this thing on my wall as decor," but it's not necessarily we're not necessarily even allowed in that, or we haven't been
Yes.
instructed correctly or things like that, then it gets into usurping that, or it gets into appropriating that, and even though maybe you're thinking, "Oh, well, my witchcraft wreath is just for decor," there's still, like, a lot of other things that you could be missing from that. So, yeah, I think I I don't it's not about necessarily asking permission, it's just make sure that you're checking on what the depth of things are before you're kind of taking them in, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's a big deal, I think. I've seen a lot of content creators specifically usurping Native American cultural things or things that they've heard are Native American that aren't actually Native American, that they're claiming are Native American.
Yep.
And I mean, I would be losing my mind if I was a Native American person with the excessive misrepresentation and I mean, honestly, harm that's being done culturally
Yes.
to them. So be careful about aesthetics and this oversimplifying of deep, millennia long traditions. I have no
Yes.
business doing hoodoo. I have no business touching certain traditions, not just Native Americans. There's lots of them that don't go with this color. So be aware. This color's white, by the way. So,
And and even if you're trying to honor that, it
right.
still may not be appropriate. You may be like, "Oh, well, I really appreciate this about this culture or this tradition, and that's why it's, hanging on my door," or whatever, and that's nice, but also making sure that, we're not reducing things to
Mhm.
just a cute little object in your home. It's not the most respectful way to honor a tradition. And so just look into what would be, a really respectful way, or, look into whether or not that's just a closed practice and you can't really be in it. And it's just important to educate ourselves because little quick videos online are not always going to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I've taken a class from an indigenous herbologist a little bit and started working with them. And always the preface of the class is this is for your personal use. You are not receiving this to teach it. I don't get to
Ah,
teach what I've been taught. I can use it. They're happy to share with me for personal use, but it's not my content and it's not meant to be shared. They decide who and when and where they share it. So, guide rails for yourself, figure out what those are. Another guide rail I use is if I see someone like they do have um, a dream catcher in their house. Is that the focus of their social media content and they have this color skin and they're the whitest white people? Okay, stop it. Just stop it. Just instead say, I love dream catchers. They're amazing symbolism and link
yeah.
them to a content creator that has permission to be in that, right? That's
Yes.
how you can find authenticity and integrity, I think, with online creators is that when they point you to the correct source instead of trying to be
Yes.
the source for something they have no business being the source of, in my
Yes.
opinion.
I totally agree. I also think, one of the things that happens when we're reducing things or, doing reduction is that we're hoping for like quick fixes, or we're hoping for like just little band-aids on some of the places where we might be hurting, or where we might be, struggling or trying to figure out who we are, or that kind of thing. And that's great, but sometimes if we put a band-aid on something that's really a lot bigger and it needs stitches, then we're not going in and doing the work and really healing. We're just kind of feeling
Right.
better really quickly. And while some spiritual practices make you feel great, like immediately, some of them are meant to, dig down and really, really like, scoop out some of the stuff that you really need to look at and bring to the surface. And like we always talk about, our shedding light on the shadow episode,
It's
in
going to be a drinking game for our podcast.
well, it's such an important part of spirituality, right?
It
And
is.
sometimes quick fixes really don't let you do that work. They don't let you look at the stuff that maybe you don't really like. And, we're especially like as just human beings that want quick fixes, I can totally get where that appeals to people. But sometimes it will really just be more of a shallow fix or a quick fix, when
Mm.
really what you need is like a long-term way to heal or deal with things. Yeah, I also feel like sometimes we're looking for answers in spirituality that like things that are outside of spirituality can help with. Maybe you need a therapist. Maybe you need to go see a doctor. Maybe you need a financial planner. Like there's like, experts in the world that can help you. And sometimes when we go, oh, if I just do this one thing, then all of my financial problems will be fixed. That's very attractive, but it's not always the best route.
I heard that if you keep $100 in your wallet, it attracts money. I was 19 when I heard that. Do you think I had a $100 bill to keep in my wallet to attract money? And I was like, oh no, I'm not going to attract money. No, that's so dumb. If you have the $100, sure, if you want to imbue that with
Yeah.
a magnetizing energy, go ahead. But let's not use the $100 to buy groceries when you don't have the $100 to leave sitting in your wallet.
Yep.
Let's be intelligent about this. I also think that a lot of closed practices are closed for protection. You don't know what you're doing, and you're stepping into something that has ancient, energetic, it's like a neural pathway for the everything. And you've pressed on that neural pathway and you don't know what's coming on
Yeah.
that program with the everything. It's already programmed and it's been happening for millennia in that practice.
And you haven't been trained how to do it or taught
Correct.
how to do it. Yeah.
Well, and you don't have the community that is used to those things coming at you. And so let's say you step on a closed practice and you start seeing beings and you go to a therapist and they lock you up in a psych ward because you don't know what's happening and you're terrified and you seek traditional help for that condition. And there was a simple answer and a simple way to deal with this problem, but you're messing in something you don't have business messing in. You don't have a proper teacher. So remember that a lot of the guardrails in spirituality are not about secretism or uh, this is mine and we're so special. We have this path that you can't access. No, you don't know what you're doing. And just like anything, I shouldn't practice medicine. I should not be a therapist. I don't know what I'm doing. I will harm people.
Yep.
Spirituality has just as big of ramifications as any other thing in life. I shouldn't also be fixing cars. I might blow them up on myself. There's lots of things I don't have any business touching. I don't know
Yes.
what I'm doing. I need a proper teacher. This
Yes.
applies to spirituality. 1,000,000,000% this applies. So be wise about, just because I heard about magic doesn't mean I should immediately go do what I saw in the 30-second video. I don't know what those roots are. I don't know. I know nothing, right? Like I said, I have no business hoodoo. Dirt magic is very hoodoo, but the way I'm using it is tied to my own practice, and I'm not doing traditional dirt magic. I'm doing my version of that. But
Like,
I didn't start doing that till I researched. So this is my soapbox. I will get off it
oh,
now.
that's okay. I also feel like one of the things, we talked about how the algorithm keeps feeding itself. Well, the thing about the algorithm is that like, the more dramatic something is, or the more the engagement is with something, then the algorithm picks it up and just like, spreads it basically. So sometimes people are getting things in their feed that honestly are not great, but because a lot of people hate it and wrote they hate it, or because a lot of people thought, "Oh my gosh, this is so urgent and scary and I must go do it," they responded or they shared it. I think sometimes like the drama of things, the algorithm kind of picks it up and runs with it.
For sure. Extremism sells. We know that.
Yep.
Uh, I have heard about um, probably 20 like true crime murder stories in the last 24 hours because they flood our feeds now. And they are, right, like I'll get emails about it. It used to be on the 5 o'clock news. You heard about crimes like that. They
Right.
weren't inundating us all of the time. And we live in a world that inundates us with information all of the time, good, bad, ugly. It's information all of the time. And there can be some fatigue with that. But there's also, everything you were just saying. I think this is
So true.
wisdom,
And I think also there's not a lot of accountability with people that present themselves as teachers. And so sometimes, like anybody can post anything, really. Like the social media doesn't go, do you have at least 10,000 hours in this? And so
Right.
you can claim you're an expert, or do you have an advanced degree on this, or that kind of thing? And you can absolutely present yourself as an expert, as a teacher, as a guru, that kind of thing, without really anybody questioning that.
Yes, I that's one of my biggest pet peeves is people that have watched those 30-second videos then say, "I'm a earth witch. I'm a, I'm a what is a hedge witch or I'm a baby witch." And they're claiming these titles. And well, I don't care what you call yourself. You can claim any title you want. Go ahead. I'm not opposed to that. I'm opposed when you then insert yourself as a teacher with that title that you've assigned yourself that's devoid of meaning because you've not earned it. Titles are earned things, um, for good or bad. That's what they are.
Mhm.
And when we start claiming titles that are not earned, we're miscommunicating to people. And some people do that on purpose. They're trying to con people. Some people do that innocently because they're excited and they're exuberant that they found this new path and they're a witch and it's so exciting. And someone that has a more cautious personality is going to hear, "Oh, they're a witch. That must mean," and they're going to apply meaning to the title you're claiming, whether you do or not. So let's be careful about how we're presenting ourselves, and let's be careful about how we hear how other people are presenting themselves. Because says who? Who says? Who says you're a multi generational witch? Tell me about that. Give me more data, and you're not going to be able to get it in 30 seconds
Yes.
because I'm giving you the spell jar, not my learning. So you
Yes.
have to investigate why their authority, where it comes from.
I love that. I feel like it's just like anything, just inform yourselves, educate yourselves. And if something resonates with you about what someone is saying, that's great. But that doesn't mean that your authority needs to be turned over to them. What works for you is great. I also feel like a lot of times when people are in maybe non-traditional spiritual paths, or not very established spiritual paths, or they're just kind of setting out on their own, or they're coming out of a particular tradition and they're trying to figure out what works for them, that it's actually a lot of times they're coming out of something that has a very strong authority, right? Like it has a leader, or it has like a particular clergy or things like that. And so sometimes you're actually looking for authority even though you don't want that authority anymore. You're like, somebody tell me what to do about this. And maybe you're just like trying to figure out what works for you. But I think sometimes online teachers or gurus or whatever, they get a lot of likes and stuff because people are trying to figure out their own way, which is great. But if you can consider them as more like guides for your spirituality versus the authority, then you kind of hold on to your own authority. You decide what works for you and what doesn't. And maybe some of what that teacher is saying does work for you, and that's great. But it's not about abdicating your authority. It's about finding good guides and qualified teachers, I think.
And this is such a deep problem for many, many, many people. One, it starts in early, you know, as a toddler, when we're learning the word no, most parents say, "Don't say that to me." They don't let you learn to say no. They don't let you learn to set clear boundaries. So a lot of people grow up without that skill at all. And then they go through a religion that says, you pray this way, you get this result. You do these things and you go to this, you know, leader of whatever that religion is, and that's the correct path, and they've earned it through seminary or whatever spiritual training. They have a
Uh-huh.
credential, they have evidence that they're an authority. And so we think it automatically, our brain just transfers. It's the you I don't know if you've heard of the study of the white coat effect for doctors, that even just putting on the white coat makes people respect them more. They listen more to what they have to say. Whether they're a good doctor or a bad doctor, it doesn't matter. We automatically hand our authority over because they're the doctor. And it's something that doctors are actually taught. Be careful about this. Be careful that they are giving you that extra weight because you're wearing the white coat. And we do it instinctually as humans. We fall into giving our authority away easily when we think someone's an expert. And that's why paying attention to their titles and where they came from matters. I'm not claiming to be a therapist. Jen is not claiming to be a doctor. And if we were using those titles, that would be fraud. And we don't have that consequence in spiritual practice. I mean, I don't wish we did because I don't want it regulated, but I kind of wish we did because I think people do great harm with
Yes.
claiming to be the white lab coat expert when they're barely dipping their toe in the water. My
Yep.
favorite is, and I know you've experienced this because we've talked about it. Someone's had a tarot deck for 5 seconds themselves, and they're like, "I'm ready to read for other people." And you're like, "Okay, baby, not today. Not while I'm here. We're not doing that. You will hurt someone because you don't know what you're doing." And just, your authority, Jen, I loved the way you said it. Your authority is enough.
I
And
agree.
if you don't know how to claim that, that's your first spiritual work. Figure out how to be able to say what I think, what I feel is the correct path for me right now. That can change. I've changed. I've grown. What was right is no longer right, but it was right in that moment.
Mhm.
So claiming your authority should be maybe number one in the modern mystic.
Or how much people have learned or been qualified or or are experts, that at the end of the day there are a few different things you can watch for in their language that will help you understand if they're really there for you, or if they have, or they're really there so they have more business or they have more followers, right? So some of the red flags
True.
include saying, only I know the truth, or only my way is the right way. Those things where someone feels like they have like the corner lot or the corner market on what's right or what's true or what's going to get someone to heaven or nirvana or whatever. um, there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of ways, and one of the best things about being human is that we can kind of figure that out for ourselves, and sometimes when people are saying, "It's only me," then they're just trying to gather a following. They're not necessarily trying to really help you figure out your authority, and if you're coming out of a tradition that had a really strong authority, you might need to practice being your own authority for a while. And
Mhm.
jumping into a space where someone says, "I'm the only one that can do this," um, is real. It can be dangerous. As a reader, I have heard about other readers that will say things like, "Well, go do this thing and everything will be great with your love life. But then you need to come back in a month and pay me $500 and I'll do this other thing. And then it will solidify it." So, like, sometimes I've heard people say, "Well, I'm the only one that can do this. So you have to come back to me and you have to give me more money." And I've had a lot of clients say, "Well, this particular person told me if I paid them this much money, they could do this thing for me." And I was like, "Well, you can do that for yourself for free." Um, so there's been a lot of times where I've heard of this, and I'm not that kind of reader. I try very hard for people to mostly build their own confidence, and I feel like a lot of what I do I verify things for people. They're like, "Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking too." And
Yes.
and that's what I want, is for people to I don't want people to have to call me for every question they have. I want them to be able to trust their own decision making. And so I think the same thing with spiritual teachers. Like, if someone's saying, "Well, I've got the corner market on teaching you chakras," or whatever, you're just gonna
Right.
like, that is something that could raise a little bit of a red flag, or, make you wonder about them.
For sure. Everything you said is perfect. And I think going back to season one and listening to where we talk more about authority and claiming your own authority would be a good idea if you're really struggling with that, because you're in danger of being co-opted if you don't know who you are. It's just that's
Totally.
human nature. It's not you. That's all of us. We're all in
Yes.
danger of that if we don't have a grounded center within us of me. This is me. So
So true. The other thing that
Yeah.
sometimes spiritual teachers do is they make everything urgent. Like, if you
Hmm.
don't do this on this day of the moon phase in this particular month, when the moon is full or whatever, like whatever it is, then you're gonna miss out, or maybe you're gonna end up being like having more difficulties, things like that. Urgency is a really great tool for manipulation, and urgency is one of those things that people that really want to be an authority will utilize so that you feel like they're the only one that can help. Or, if there's like a horrible thing happening and I'm the only one who gets it, or I'm the only one that can give you the answer, then I'm looking for your authority versus trying to say, this thing is happening. Feel free to, do this practice if it calls to you. That doesn't really get people business. So I think they don't do it a lot because of that. But knowing that like urgency, or that kind of like, if you don't do it now, you're going to miss out. We don't like to miss out on things. So we, we just get kind of like, oh, maybe I should do that because so and so said this and they said it was so much confidence and urgency. So watch for urgency too, like that exclusive knowledge. I'm the only one. And then the like urgency. They're really good places where you could kind of take a second look and go, does that really does that really work? Our brains are so trained to react that, when we add the fact that someone's being dramatic with the fact that they're being urgent, and the algorithm keeps like putting it through our feed or those kinds of things through our feed, it could make you start to think like maybe, I don't know, maybe the algorithm knows something I don't, or something like that. But if we could just take a breath and give ourselves a few seconds of silence and just like let our brain go from like the reaction part to like the actual thinking part, it really helps a lot to kind of go, I don't really know if I even believe that, or I don't know if that makes any sense to me. So you giving yourself some space when you're getting that kind of like urgency is going to help you kind of figure out if things are for you or not.
And the third word I want to add to, we have urgency, we have exclusivity and scarcity. Oh,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
not a lot of this. I can only take 5 students and 4 spots are full. So if you want it, you better hurry.
Yes.
My mantra, I've shared before, pausing doesn't always work for me. It's not my
You,
tool.
you blow through the pause. Yeah.
I do. What does work for me is a sentence I say all the time: nature is never in a hurry. And if I'm aligning with my spiritual practice, which is very inclusive of nature, then it's not part of my practice to be in a hurry. I don't need to rush into things. And know this: those are marketing tools, those are marketing words. And often those exclusive or scarce things, they will close the doors, but they'll open them again in 6 months or a year. So you're
Yep.
fine.
Or
If
six
they're
weeks.
making money off of it, yes.
Mhm.
If they have lack of integrity, they'll even open it the next day. So i- those scarcity things, those are not real. Those are marketing tactics because, one, we want to belong as human beings. Two, we
Yeah.
don't want to miss out as human beings. We're afraid of missing out. FOMO's a real thing.
Mhm.
An acronym for it because it's such a real thing. So be aware that those are intentional tactics used by people trying to make money in a business. I try and make money in a spiritual business. So I understand those tactics. I try to grow my business through referral. I try to grow my business through other means than through scarcity, exclusivity, and fear. I mean, essentially.
Yep.
So those are intentionally targeting your psyche because they work. That's why they're using them. That to me is a hard pass. If someone's using those tactics, even if they have great things to say, they're not for my spiritual practice.
Okay.
That's how I filter. There's so much. That's one of my
Okay.
filters.
That's an awesome way to discern things, and a good segue into discerning,
Yes.
different kinds of, when you're online, like, trying to discern what works for you and what doesn't, we could pause, we could say, "My, nature's in a hurry, never in a hurry, so, my spirituality is in a hurry." But I also think, like, there's something about those messages, when they come through, if you're paying attention to how they make you feel, right? Because urgency sometimes makes you just feel fearful, right? But if people are coming through as, like, empowering, if you feel really empowered after you watch something, or you feel inspired, or you feel like, I could do this. This is me, that resonates, that kind of thing. Look for how things make you feel, because if the content is making you feel crappy, that's probably not going to be, for your best, or for your best growth. But if it's, like, inspiring and helping you and making you feel like, "Oh, I'm gonna go try that and see how it goes," then that might be a really great discernment. Just always, we want to pay attention to how things feel in our bodies. And that's how intuition comes through. That's how a lot of, like, our comfort levels come through. So, how does the content make you feel is a great question to ask.
Yep, it is. It's a good I think that's the question to ask, you
Yeah.
know? If you're excited, if you're curious, if it opens you versus suppresses and closes you, that's the energy we're looking for.
Yes, and also just trust your own intuition, right? If something feels off, it's off. And maybe it's only off for you and it's not for other people, that's fine too. But the idea for you is, like, just make sure that you're trusting yourself. And if there's a caution, or like a little bit of, like, holding me back, that kind of thing, then that's important and it's valid, and it's really, the best tool for kind of discerning what works for you and what doesn't.
And if you've struggled with authority, you may struggle with knowing your intuition.
True.
And we did cover, oh my gosh, a practical guide to trusting your gut. And we talk about different types of intuition and learning to practice your intuition.
Mhm.
So if you don't know how your intuition works, go listen to that episode.
Absolutely.
And find a way to like I know one of my friends, Kathy, always uses muscle testing because it's easy, it's fast, right? So find something that's quick and easy for you, if especially if you're susceptible to that looks fun, or I want to be a part of that, or FOMO, right? If you're susceptible to those things, have a quick test that doesn't exhaust your willpower every day all the time going
Love
through
it.
content.
So true. And also, like we talked about, a lot of things are not, they don't have a lot of depth online. So if you're looking for that depth, that will help you also. If someone's telling you why we do it this way, or this is, like, just one way to do it, or things like that, that's going to help you feel like, okay, this is not just like a little, I don't know, icing on top of the cake. It's like the cake too. And so I think knowing that is important. And also, I love that when people explain why, it helps you get more context. And so I think that's really important too, is to feel like, oh, so I'm not just listening to this because you said it. I'm listening to this because of A, B, and C reasons.
I love that. And I
Me too.
like um, using social media as a jumping off point, right? To get us into
Yes.
our practice. That's kind of moving into your actual practice. It's great to be inspired, but my Pinterest board isn't my practice. It could be an
Right.
altar. If you can't put up an altar, you could have a Pinterest altar. I know people that do that. That's
Mhm.
useful use of social media, but it's not it's the practice is inside of me. And if all my attention is there, this is not happening.
I think that's the key, is that social media should be used as inspiration and not necessarily instruction. You can go do your own research or play with your own practices and figure out what works for you. At the end of the day, we want to spend more time in real life doing our practices than we do necessarily sort of scrolling through social media and adopting. So just making sure that you're participating in your own practice and translating the inspiration into something that works for you is probably the most important part.
Yeah, but getting together with like-minded people if you can
Yeah.
locally is a great idea to build. those communities. And even for Jennifer and I, who have been doing this forever, it feels like, to me at least, uh, I learn something from everyone. I'll learn a new way to do something, or the way they'll talk about something will deepen my connection to that practice. So, getting together with a diverse group, I would highly recommend that in real life if you can. Hopefully, we'll do some events and you can meet other modern mystics in real life. If
That would be great.
yeah,
Yeah. I love that. I feel like social media is such a great way to introduce you to spirituality or different ways to do things. But at the end of the day, your real practice is off screen, not necessarily on.
that was my favorite line. I think you should say it again.
I think the bottom line is that social media can introduce you to spirituality or different forms of practice. But at the end of the day, your practice happens off screen in your real life.
The end. The end. Nothing more to say after that. Like, uh,
Okay.
now that we've told you all the dangers of social media, please like and follow us on social media.
Yes.
So we can keep doing this podcast. That's
I
honestly
know,
why.
that would be great. Thank you so much for watching or listening. We really appreciate the conversations we have with you, so feel free to comment on things, give us your take on things that you might watch out for as far as social media spirituality goes, or some things you've been inspired by on social media for your spiritual practice, because there's good and bad to all of it, and we love learning about things and learning about what you bring to your practice from all of this. We all learn from each other.
We do. And going forward, they will either be known by Jen or I, but we're going to start sharing some other content creators that we feel are ethical and that have some backing behind the things they're saying, so that if you don't know where to start, we'll start hopefully sharing some more of that, and letting you know some of who our partners are and who we trust as
Absolutely.
peers for us. So
Yep, who
look for
can
that.
also be inspiring and instructing for you. So, yeah. Thanks, everybody.